All right, it is time for the Michael Newman Show. Haven't done a video in a little while, so we'll do a little long one for you. Let's get it going.
Progressivism is alive and well.
Jesus was considered a feminist.
What bugs me and a lot of other people is when periods are associated with womanhood.
Can we get your friend? You're fucking a white male!
It's gender equality.
You're a fucking scumbag. In order to paint with our period blood, I have to collect my period blood.
I do not expect everyone in the world to understand my identity.
Oh, damn.
Everyone is valid and worthy of love.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm lying. We're not live right now, but the show is on. Recording it for you. Trying to make sure everything works here. Hey, go to the website, thenewmanshow.com. If you go there, you can get all the links for today's show, plus more, and contact me, and you can support me on Patreon. Please just click support, and you can take care of me that way, plus just a whole lot more. Go check it out. thenewmanshow.com. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining the show. What has happened today? The FBI admits it failed. It failed to preserve 5 months of text messages from anti-Trump FBI agents. Failed to preserve. What does that mean? It means it deleted 5 months of very scary pieces of information they didn't want people to know about. The FBI mysteriously failed to preserve 5 months of text messages between a senior FBI agent who worked on the special counsel Robert Mueller, his Trump-Russia investigation, and his mistress, an FBI lawyer. The Department of Justice made the disclosure in a letter to the Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee. That happened Friday. Deleted would be a better word. Failed to preserve is a different thing. Of course, they're all lawyers down there, so they like to write things in such a way that releases them from indemnity. The department, this is a quote, by the way, the department wants to bring to your attention that the FBI's technical system for retaining text messages sent and received on FBI mobile devices failed to preserve text messages from Mr. Is it Storks? Is that how you say his name? Or Stork? It's spelled weird, and somebody pronounced it like Stork, and we'll just go with that. I'm fine with Stork. And Miss Page, Stork and Page. The letter states, Stephen Boyd, the Assistant Attorney General for Legislative Affairs, penned the letter citing a misconfiguration issue related to rollouts, provisioning, and software upgrades that conflicted with the FBI's collection capabilities. Strangely, they got all the other information. They just missed this information right as the Mueller investigation was, getting going. Isn't that fantastic? Couple of things. Number one, this is a big deal. Okay, because it shows a willingness and potential massive amount of corruption within the FBI. That's a big deal in general. Number two, how does the text message thing work with the government? That's my question. How does that work? Do they have a way of deleting the text messages off of the cell phone provider servers, or do the FBI, do they have their own cell phones? Is that how it works? What was their provider? Who was their provider? Should we not start subpoenaing the provider, the cell phone provider? I don't think that the FBI has their own cell phone service. I mean, I could be wrong. I mean, they have all the money in the government. They have all of our money, so they could build a cell phone network if they wanted to, but I don't think they did. I'm wondering if that information is still out there somewhere that we can look for it, which kind of bugs me too, because this is another one of those sort of red herrings. Oh, we forgot, man, we screwed up. We totally screwed up and we lost the information, then somebody digs for it. Spent all this time, build up all this street cred, build up all this anticipation trying to find this information. Next thing you know, they find the information, there's nothing there. and it deflates the entire issue. Now, why is this a big deal? Why is this an important issue? Well, the FBI agent who was removed from special counsel Robert Mueller's Trump-Russia probe and his mistress, an FBI lawyer, appeared to know that the FBI would not recommend criminal charges against Hillary Clinton before the FBI's investigation into the Clinton email server. Okay, so they knew what was going on here before anybody else knew. Newly released text messages given to the Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee late Friday appeared to show that senior FBI agent Patrick Storks, that's what I'm going to call him, and his mistress Lisa Page, knew that Clinton wouldn't be prosecuted in advance of then FBI Director James Comey's decision to not pursue any issues. Text message also showed that then Attorney General Loretta Lynch knew that Clinton wouldn't be charged, despite Lynch's recusal and Comey's claims that he didn't coordinate this decision with anyone within the government. That exchange happened on July 1st of 2016, one day before Storks personally interviewed Clinton for the investigation. So this is the guy's big Clinton lover. He was the one that actually conducted the interview with Clinton, and he knew before he went to that interview, nothing was going to come out of it. He knew that charges weren't going to be filed. He knew then. So this entire, oh yeah, we'll investigate Hillary, was all smoke and mirrors. It was already worked out with the administration, with the Obama Justice Department, which is probably one of, if not the most corrupt Justice Department in the history of the United States. They knew that Clinton was not going to be looked at. They knew that. So it's starting to look like this was a, conspiracy is the wrong word. This was a movement from the very beginning, and it's been culminating of late in this Russia dossier and the fake news that Russia hacked and somehow manipulated the elections here in the United States. Understand this, and this is I never hear any pundits talk about this, and I never hear anybody bring it up. But shortly after the election happened, when fake news was, it was Trump derangement syndrome and fake news was all the rage, there was several studies done in several months after the election took place, and it talked about the areas of fake news that Russia supposedly got into. We're talking about Facebook memes and things of that nature. And it looked at the efficacy of those efforts. So had Russia done everything that they did at the behest of the Trump administration, had all that happened, how much effect did it have on the election? The answer was virtually zero. So no matter what Russia did or did not do, none of that stuff had any effect. All the memes and all the Facebook and all the Twitter and all that stuff, zero effect on the outcome of the election. People had already made up their mind. And when they see stuff, the thing is, I think people get a bit combative. I do sometimes. I don't reply very often. Virtually never do I reply, like on Facebook, to stuff that I see. And I see some stuff that's just blatantly stupid and partisan. I see it all the time, but I figure, what's the point in fighting these people? I'm not going to do it. On Twitter, on occasion, I'll get into it with some people that I don't know via somebody else's feed. They'll send something down and I'll make a comment, and somebody comments on my comment, and then I destroy them. Strangely, my conversations never go more than too deep. So I'll say something, they make a comment back that's snarky, I make a third comment, and no one ever wants to talk to me again, because my third comment always makes them look foolish. It's what I do. Now, with all that said, the wonderful people at NPR come out with a piece today. Of course, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the general gist is this, that all this stuff is so bad. It's terrible that this information about the FBI is coming out, because, you see, we need to have credibility in our agencies. And if we know this stuff, it hurts the credibility of our agencies, and that's just a big problem for us. It's been called a criminal cabal rife with corruption. It's been said that its leaders need to be taken out in handcuffs, and its reputation, once high-placed officials had charged, is in tatters. The FBI has come under criticism before, but the ongoing barrage of allegations has left its current and former officials shaken. It's also fueled concerns that the Bureau's reputation with the public could begin to crumble. I think it's already began to crumble. As a matter of fact, there's not an agency within government that I think most people give a hell of beans about anymore, because we just don't buy that they're on our side. Well, that didn't work the way it was supposed to work. I hate it when that happens. All right, let's see what's happening within the news, my friends. This is kind of a scary deal. 19-year-old out of Minneapolis, Tunzia J. Hassan, 19, of Minneapolis, allegedly said she wanted the school to burn to the ground. Yes, she likes to burn things. She is a vicious fire starter. And that her intent was to hurt people, according to the report. Complaint filed in the Ramsey County District Court. Hassan was charged with one count of felony first-degree arson. She allegedly told police that similar attacks occurred in Muslim land, and no one was upset that Muslims were hurt. She also allegedly told police, fire investigators, "You guys are lucky that I don't know how to build a bomb, because I would have done that." I don't know where she's from. I don't know who her family is. I don't know who she's talking to. Has some bad things gone on in the Middle East, some unjustified. I would imagine that is the case. But setting fire to your Catholic school, or a Catholic school, I don't know if she went there, is probably not the best way to handle it, at least not in the United States. We don't take kindly to those sorts of things. We call the police. That's what we do. Speaking of scary things happening, this one in Florida. Yeah, the FBI says they're working with the Lake Wales Police Department, probably mall cops too, which is kind of that. If you're a mall cop talking to the FBI, yeah. If you need my help, boys, I'll be over here. I know everything there is to know about this mall. I'll tell you the ins and outs. Lake Wales Police Department and the Polk County Sheriff's Office to investigate reports of an explosion at the Lake Wales Mall that happened Saturday night.
That police have found no additional devices inside the mall or outside. This is where it happened, right here outside the service entrance, outside the Eagle Ridge Mall in Lake Wales. Police had to get everybody out of this area yesterday around 5:30. The explosion happening right in near adjacent store. Take a look at some videos shortly after the explosion happened. We're learning that the two bombs were a type of flare inside a PVC pipe. They were wrapped in electrical tape and exploded in that service hallway. It damaged some of the ceiling there, but not much else. Thankfully, no one was shopping in the area. Now, here's what investigators saw when they first arrived in the store.
Yeah, I don't know if PD's en route. It's sort of a suspicious pack they got here. Looks like some, I don't know what it is, homemade plastics, electrical tape, and some other stuff they try to throw in the drop ceiling.
You know, it's one of those things where it's Florida. So if it doesn't have fangs, and if it's not from the Jurassic period, they don't really care anymore. I mean, if there's a giant alligator, well, then somebody's got to come in and figure this out. But if it just looks like a pipe bomb, you know, that's kind of a good old boy logic. Okay, well, there's a pipe bomb, but I'm looking at it. It doesn't look like it's much of a pipe bomb, right? So, we're not too worried.
And now to who police are searching for. Witnesses tell police they saw a man running away. He is now considered a person of interest. Police say he is a middle-aged white man with a stocky build. He was last seen wearing a gray shirt with a gray hat. Now back out here live, police say that there's nothing to indicate that this is anything to do with terrorism.
Oh,
Progressivism
Why did that
is
happen?
alive and well.
No.
Jesus
No.
was considered a feminist.
How about we hit that button there? There we go. I don't know why that fired off. I'm going to have to go through all my buttons here because I think some of my buttons are screwed up. Anyway, as far as that goes, yeah, it doesn't seem like it's a terrorist deal. They had an update a little bit later on. They showed sort of a blurry image of some guy in black running by. Who knows? It could be a really bad terrorist, like a terrorist that doesn't know what they're doing, or it could be somebody that's disgruntled, and you never know. It's, for God's sake, it's Florida, right? It could have been a homemade candle. Who knows what's happening? It's Florida. So we'll have to follow this. I haven't seen a whole lot of mention of this on the mainstream news. So it's either a huge deal or it's no deal at all, right? So you can't really tell. If no one wants to talk about it, then it's either not a big deal, which is a very good possibility, or it's the biggest deal on the face of the planet. And it's it was actually one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse with a pipe bomb in a Florida mall. That's who it was. It's the worst thing that's ever happened to mankind in the history of history, and we're all going to die. So it's somewhere. Well, it's not in between that. There's nothing in between. It's one of those two things. So we'll have to find out what else is going on in the world of politics. How about to Francie? Not Francine, but, France. The nation. Right? Sorry. I'm just... I hate France. I really do. Anyway, the president of France, Emmanuel Macron, sent shockwaves through Europe after he concluded French voters would quit the EU if France held an in-out referendum like Brussels did.
Might have had the same result, yeah? Yes or no in a very complicated context.
If
and
France
had a referendum, it might have had the same result, yeah? Probably. In a similar context, but our context was very different. So I don't want to make any, take any bet, but I would have definitely find it very hard to win. But I think it's a mistake when you just ask yes or no, when you don't ask people how to improve the situation and to explain how to improve.
So what is that? It should end. Why aren't you ending? There we go.
Sylvan understands me.
I don't care about Sylvan. That was a bad edit, is what that was. I should have paid more attention. Yeah. So what is that saying? That's kind of it should send some shockwaves through Europe, because I really do think the EU is hanging by a thread. It's not doing a good job with the individuals within countries. The EU is the USSR. That's what it is. It is a mini state, a very powerful, unelected people that are in control of these massive states. And they're controlled in a very bureaucratic way. Yes, they're not controlled with guns, but our predilection for using violence to get yourself out of a bad situation has waned since World War II, really. So, it's not like Europe's going to go to war over this. They're going to have to talk their way out of it. And Brussels has figured out a way to entrench themselves so deeply that it's very difficult for member states to remove themselves. So just coming out and saying that he recognizes that the French people themselves would probably vote to leave should be a sign of the coming times for the EU. What else is happening in Europe? A Brit teenager posed as a CIA boss to access secret military files and sent lewd rape threats to Homeland Security chief. I'm gonna rape ya. Well, he's British, so he's certainly doesn't sound Scottish. Brit teenager, he's a hacker. He posed as a CIA boss to access secret military files and sent lewd rape threats to Homeland Security chief. That is what the court heard. His name is Kane Gamble. He's 18 now. He hacked into intelligence head John Brennan's email account, made hoax calls to his family at home, and even took control of his wife's iPad. Pretty crazy. The hacks were carried out as part of a campaign of harassment against top U.S. officials motivated by his political beliefs. Gamble was just 15 when he posed as a telecoms worker, and Brennan himself, to gain information including passwords, contact lists, sensitive documents about operations in Afghanistan and Iraq. Now, what does this say? This should bother you for a very fundamental reason. Hacking, okay? Hacking is not what you think it is. We watch way too much TV, and we watch way too many movies. And I say this as a person who used to believe this way, that hacking was you had some supercomputer that you could go in and just bypass passwords and get into a system without people knowing it. That's not the case. Nowadays, sometimes they can get you to upload some spyware, some malware that puts a backdoor into a already open system. So if you're on your email server or whatever it is, it's open, it's unlocked at that point, it's active. And if you were to open something while it's active, then the spyware, malware, whatever it is, can download software into it such that that person could gain control. They could put a keystroke logger to figure out where your password is and all that stuff. So from a completely technical standpoint of hacking, that's how they do it. Generally, though, hacking is not about your computer prowess, but your ability to lie and pose as other people. Apparently, that's what this guy did. I mean, he posed as Brennan himself, according to the article. And in the process, gain operational knowledge of Afghanistan and Iraq. This is a 15-year-old kid. I would imagine this 15-year-old kid isn't a brilliant savant. He's just an angry kid. And he was able to glean, we don't know how much, but he was at least able to glean a significant amount of information. That was when he was 15. So, the question is, what the hell is up with the CIA and everybody else within our government that a 15-year-old on his own, without the aid of some sort of bad state actor like Russia, was able to hack in and get all this sensitive information? What the hell's going on? You know, when they say that they need all this information on you and me and everybody else, when they can't even provide adequate security for sensitive operational details of the Afghan and Iraq war. You're not trustworthy enough to have my information. Here's a good one, like this. CBS veteran anchor Dan Rather, is officially back as a progressive digital outlet. The Young Turks has announced plans to launch a 30-minute weekly show hosted by the former reporter starting on Monday at 5:30. I wonder if, was that this Monday? I don't think it was this Monday. I'll have to go check it out. I think it's probably next Monday. Sorry, I'm burping here. I don't know why. 30-minute show, 5:30 Eastern time. While Rather is also known for his work in the upper echelon of mainstream establishment media. Of course, he was kicked out because he was found to be a liar. He told CNN, Oliver Darcy, that something clicked with the edgier online outlet founded by Cenk Uygur, and that is the Young Turks. So, this says a whole lot about who Dan Rather is. There were questions of Dan's credibility. He's lied many, many times for political purposes on his show. The most notably about President George W. Bush. Okay? But he did it before, right? And he was never pushed out. He was never moved around. As a matter of fact, the left the more he would lie, the more the left would give him awards. But unfortunately, when this whole Bush fiasco happened, there happened to be another media out there that would call him out on it, and people found out that he's a liar, and then he had to get off the network. Now, the left has always held him as the darling and said that we didn't know what we were talking about. And even though he made up the document, even though the document was fake, the information in it was real. That was their excuse. Now, this decision to go and hang out with the Young Turks says a lot about the credibility, says a lot about the character of the man, because the Young Turks isn't edgy. It's partisan to an extreme. And, of course, it's a big coup for the Young Turks there because they're getting someone that's older and has some mainstream credibility. But for Dan Rather, it really just... all it does is confirm what we already know, that Dan Rather is a partisan hack. All right, this time it worked. Hey, I like it when my buttons work. Sometimes they don't. In the Spotlight, my friends, new segment on the show where we just go around the YouTubes there and find a video that I think is informational and importante. And this one is about a gentleman professor, not a conservative. He's been branded every bad thing that a conservative can be called, but he's not a conservative. Although I think he's coming around to a more conservative side. Certainly, you have to look at him as a classic liberal. We'll give him that. Bret Weinstein, a former biology professor at Evergreen State College. Remember that place? He became the infamy of the left after speaking out against the day of absence. The day of absence was the day they said all white people get off campus. He said, well, no, that's ridiculous and racist, and that's the wrong way to go. And, of course, the campus exploded at that point because you dare not question the left orthodoxy. And he's come out. There's a lot going on. There was a lawsuit. Mr. Weinstein made some money off this deal, which he very well should have. And now he's speaking out on YouTube where he's saying the left is eating itself.
I'm going to try to stick to the plan. The plan is to address the question, is the left eating itself? And I think there are a couple of ways that we can answer this question. One is yes. Another would be, yes, of course it is. I mean, that may be my lived experience speaking here, but it seems so transparently obvious that that is what is going on that I feel inclined really to move on to the more interesting question, which is why is the left eating itself? But that does mean that I have to address some of what's been said here. How can we disagree? If it's so obvious to me that the left is eating itself, then how am I sitting on a panel with people who are obviously well-spoken and informed, maybe more so than I am, who disagree? And I think, in part, it's going to come down to definitions, which could be a very semantic, dry discussion, were it not for the reason that the definitions are in flux. And so I think we should probably get there soon enough. For the moment, what I want to do is suggest a kind of approach to understanding why this really is the left that is attacking some of us who all our lives would have called ourselves leftists. And the first thing I would suggest is that we may have a basic problem with the game theory of progressivism. It is quite possible that what is taking place is that the left has a bad actor problem that arises out of some of the fundamental assumptions of progressivism. And I don't mean to strike a negative note. I do think it is possible to structure a left that would be more or less immune to a bad actor problem. But what I'm witnessing in the present are bad actors that have control over the entire dialogue, and that is a very dangerous situation. The first thing that I recognized a bit before things went haywire at Evergreen, or at least went haywire publicly, was that the people I was talking to, and most of the population at Evergreen is pretty far left, but I recognized that there was a hidden dichotomy between two populations within the left. One of those populations earnestly wishes equality, and there can be some debate over what it is that is being equalized, but virtually everybody on the left would say that they are for equality of opportunity. Then there's another population that does not wish equality of opportunity. What it wishes to do is to turn the tables of oppression. And the problem for us is that when these two populations are intermingled, they sound alike until the point that you reach something like equality of opportunity, and we are nowhere near that point. At that point, they would clearly diverge, and you would discover that some of the people who had been pursuing some nominal version of equality were really about some radical version of inequity with new people at the head. And I do think that that's what we are facing. And the most confusing aspect of it is that the people who are earnestly seeking something like equality of opportunity are unaware that they have signed up with something unholy and un-American. One of the consequences of this dichotomy, the bad actors having taken control of the movement, is that they have begun to erect structures that lead a lot of people to sign up before they really know what it is that they're signing up for. You'll find across the dialogue of the left at the moment, you'll find words that once upon a time had a definition that you might have struggled a little bit to resurrect it, but you could have figured out what words like equity probably meant. And those words have taken on very different meanings in the present. And they're actually part of a larger structure. So we have what I would call linguistic booby traps. We have policy proposals on college campuses and elsewhere that are actually Trojan horses that are described as pursuing one thing, but actually serve a function other than the one that is on the title page. And then we have stigma that is playing an incentivizing role, or actually more correctly, a disincentivizing role. So people like myself who stand up against policy proposals that put my institution in jeopardy find ourselves faced with a social penalty for having done so. And it seems funny in my case. They came after me with the accusation that I was a racist, and then it turned out that there were a lot of people who could tell you that wasn't true, so it backfired on them a bit. But in fact, none of these stigmatizing concepts really depends on being accurate. The most important thing that they do is they isolate you. And that is a means to an end. These are not logical arguments that are being deployed. This is leverage that is being wielded against individuals that are considered troubling from the point of view of the movement. And I would argue that the best way to conceptualize what this movement really is to understand that we don't get to listen in on most of the actual dialogue that results in the structuring. What we listen in on is the public face of this movement. And the movement is really properly understood as an insurgency that privately has decided that it is entitled to disrupt the functioning of certain things that it regards as, quote unquote, problematic, and that once it has decided that you are problematic, there are no holds barred. If you recognize it as an insurgency and you stop listening to what it says it is attempting to accomplish, it will be much clearer what is taking place. Maybe that's where I should leave off in light of the differences of opinion on the panel. Probably the best thing we can do is try to hash them out. But please consider thinking about this as an insurgency engaged in an action that it understands far better than those of us who are looking on from the sideline.
Well, yes and no, and we need to fill in the gaps a little bit here. He's recognizing that the left attacks itself, and he's trying to come up with the reasons why. And I think he's on to a couple of things here. The fact that he says that most on the left would say that they are looking for equity of opportunity, which, by the way, is what everybody else is preaching. Look, equity of outcomes is unrealistic unless we blind everybody and cut a foot off. That's unrealistic, but equity in opportunity is something to strive for. Now, we've done that. That's the problem. Equity of opportunity in this country exists. Now, you can bring in these questions of privilege and all these different things, and my argument would be that privilege isn't privilege. Privilege doesn't give you necessarily a step up to success. Hard work, or even better to say adversity, or the lack of privilege, things literally standing in your way, are more advantageous to you achieving high levels of success than any amount of privilege ever could be. Now, will you have an easier life if it's quote unquote privileged or rich? That's really what they want to say. You got all this money, your life is so easy. In a monetary sense, sure. But the rich person and the poor person still have interpersonal relationships and problems and drug habits. And I mean, call it rich man, poor man. Rich people die of drug overdoses and suicide, so do poor people. So to be able to glean who actually has privilege, you would have to come up with a scale of misery. And that's just not something you can do because everybody perceives life in their own way. So why does the left attack the left? Well, seeing as how equality of opportunity has been achieved, we'll say to 99% in the Western world, certainly in the United States of America. So you must, to keep your movement alive, you must turn it into anger. You must turn it into this getting back at the oppressors. And he's recognized that that's what it is. It's getting back at the oppressors at this point. But the thing that you're missing is that all leftist causes eventually end up this way. Everything that's left ends up this way. Everything that's communist, this is how all communism starts. This is how fascism starts, which are all left-wing. This is how it works. As a matter of fact, you know, there's a lot of people that claim to be communists in these groups, the Antifas and all these different people, but truthfully, they're fascists is what they are. You must believe, you must think, and you must act in one specific way, and do not deviate, because if you do, you then become the enemy. That is a fascist belief system. And many of the policies that they advocate for are essentially fascist. You know, fascism is basically a free economy that's completely controlled by the government. So you can have your private business and you can be responsible for your private business, but you will run that private business how government tells you to do it. What does that sound like? Does it sound like Obamacare? That's exactly what Obamacare is, a fascist imprint over the top of private industry. Now, that's just one of many that exist within our country. So understand that we are fighting fascism. We are fighting the entirety of what the left has been ever since the left began. And it really comes down to a group of people that are trying to seek more power over you, not because you're oppressive, but because they don't want to work anymore. Okay, it just won't stop. It just won't stop, just won't stop. You know, as much as I love the website, I think I'm going to stop going to Campus Reform because I've always got something on here that's, it gets stuck in my craw. Although there is a couple of good stories here. One is from a Harvard professor. A professor at Harvard Law School recently criticized supporters of the Me Too movement for failing to uphold principles of basic fairness. Elizabeth Borthwaite, or Barthoit, here we go, who teaches civil liberties and family law, extensively detailed her concerns with the Me Too movement in an editorial for the Harvard Crimson. Despite her approval of the Me Too movement's ability to deliver justice when needed and its power in supporting victims of sexual assault, the professor expressed deep concern over whether due process may be failing by the wayside. She especially is worried about the ability of anonymous complainants to terminate careers without any investigation of the facts. Well, if you think about it, and she's absolutely right, we have due process within our Constitution for a reason. So people couldn't be shouted down and pushed out of the public square. It's just a sick and disgusting thing. But if you think about it, this is a perfect example of democratic rules. See, we don't live in a democracy. We live in a representative republic. We get to vote on those that are going to represent us, and those representatives go out and represent, or at least they're supposed to. They're having kind of a problem with that over the past couple of years, but that's a completely different story. This whole Me Too movement is example of democracy in action, right? It's whatever the mob wants. It's mob rule. And strangely enough, it's democracy of the small. It's a small group of people. The Me Too movement people are a very small group of people. We're talking these leftists that are exerting so much power on society are a very small group of people, even within the major cities, even within the leftist bastions of thought within New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago. I would imagine that really, when it really comes down to it, most of those people still believe in due process. The Me Too people don't. All they want is to be able to point a finger and take somebody out. They want that sort of power. They want the power of a king or queen to off with the head of the people we don't like for whatever reason. That is democracy in action, my friends, and it's something to be feared. Here's another one. Pierce College will have to defend the constitutionality of its policies restricting speech to just 0.003% of the campus after a judge rejected its motion to dismiss a student's lawsuit. Huh. That sounds good, doesn't it? With the help of an attorney at the Foundation for Individual Rights and Education, a student, Kevin Shaw, sued the school in March after administration refused to let him distribute copies of the Constitution outside the school's free speech zone, which encompassed just 616 square feet. Okay, 616 square feet. That is a tiny, tiny area. 616 square feet. Most apartments aren't that small, especially out of a 426-acre campus. So it's 0.003%, 1/100th of 1%, or is that 1,000th? Is zeros, tens, hundreds? Ooh, 3,000ths of the entire size of the campus. Shaw was also told he must fill out a permit application to use the free speech zone and that he would have to leave the campus if he refused to comply, which the school's defense attorney had sought to justify by arguing that the campus is a non-public forum. According to the court order, the motion was dismissed in part because given the traditional purpose of open outdoor areas at universities such as the mall on the Pierce campus, the court finds that these areas are traditional public fora, regardless of Pierce's designation, naming them non-public fora. So just because Pierce College comes in and says, well, this isn't a public place, we are going to designate what a public place is, and then at that point, we'll call it a free speech area, and that's a public place, and we'll just put you where we don't want to see you. Sorry, this is a state institution, and you can't do that. So this case will go forward. Bully for this kid. One last one here, talking about Camp I out there. The campus police escorted 2 Trump supporters from the premises of the University of Southern California when a mob threatened their safety following a gubernatorial town hall meeting. The town hall, a partnership between USC and the Empowerment Congress, that sounds like an awful group of people, plus the Los Angeles County Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas, took place at USC's Boulevard Auditorium on Saturday, January 13th. Okay, as the pair took their seats, these 2 apparently Trump supporters, there for candidate Travis Allen, protesters with signs declaring people over profit hounded them for their evident political views. When the protesters began chanting the slogan, some audience members quietly booed. A woman sitting in front of the pair then turned around and told one of the men to be quiet. The man defended his right to civility and replied to the protesters. The woman then reported him to the campus police, who pulled him out of his seat to discuss the incident outside the auditorium. He explained the situation, and the police permitted him to return to his seat after hearing both sides of the dispute. Meanwhile, the event security did not question a disruptive woman screaming about single-payer health care insurance. Following the town hall, yet another woman tried to block the camera that the guy had by throwing a container of food at him. Multiple bystanders made derogatory comments directed at, I'm not using the guy's name because I can't pronounce it. He's not what one would consider a native-born American. It's Uzziel. U-Z-Z-I-E-L. Uzziel. And at one point, a man walked up and berated him, saying, "You're an example of white privilege." Well, we'll just go through this and see what we can get out of it. Here's a video of partially of what happened.
Why can't I?
Is he giving?
He's telling me to take out my sunglasses or fashions.
Really?
Yeah, like.
So he's not allowed to wear.
So he's this gentleman here is an example of white privilege. Is that what it is? I mean, because he has a Trump hat on, is that what it is? Huh.
Sunglasses. Now she's trying to call the police on you again. You have a problem with the free exchange of ideas, lady?
I'm an American.
Why do you have a problem with the guy who's Jewish and Hispanic who wanted to voice an opinion while you were rallying with people who wanted people before profits? Why did you call the police on him? Is it because you think he's a hoodlum or something?
They don't agree with her. She's a fascist.
Okay.
To those that don't agree with her.
So why did you call the police?
Yeah.
You know, this guy didn't harm anybody. This guy has defended women and children. Why did you call the police on him? He has a right to know who he should vote for governor. So, Hareem, do you think it's like she doesn't want you to vote at all or something?
I don't know. Something.
Okay, so the guy's Jewish and Hispanic, and apparently he is the poster child for white privilege because he's got American flag and a Trump hat on. He's got a little Trump hat there. It's kind of cool. I like the colors on his Trump hat. It's a little bit more, a little subdued, kind of cooler. Walk around with it. It's pretty sweet. And it's a trucker hat, so that's kind of cool. I guess it's a very good possibility that these two gentlemen are absolutely alone in this forum, which I think would be frightening if you're one of the two, but that's just the way things are, I guess, in this day and age of hysteria and craziness. So what can you do? What can you do, my friend? So that is what's happening. That is the stuff that absolutely won't stop. Our campi are crazy. And I'll tell you, the only way we're going to end it is, and people think I'm nuts. People think I'm insane. But eventually you'll come to the realization that I'm right about everything I say all the time. And that is the only way this stuff is going to end is to stop funding education. That's it. Public school, K through 12, college, stop funding it. And the second you stop funding education, guess what's going to happen? The prices are going to go down. The quality of the education is going to go through the roof. You're going to have a bunch of engaged kids because mom and dad that's paying for their education will force them to be. It would be a whole different metric in this country, a whole different way of looking at things. And it would certainly make things a bit better. All right, Google. I found this to be very interesting because what's the question about Google, Facebook, the Twitters and all this, and they're doing all the censorship and what have you, and many of the conservatives or even libertarians out there will come out and say, well, it's a private business. They can do whatever they want. I have a tendency to disagree with that simply because your Facebook page, they never directed you to put anything on it. They never told you what you could put on it. Okay? That is your intellectual property. That is your content. That is your page that, by the way, you paid for. What? It's a free? No, it's not free. You paid for it. And because of that, it's not, your Facebook page is not their property, in my opinion. I'm sorry, your Facebook page is like a telephone or a car. You don't purchase it and then GM tells you where you can drive. Sorry, that's not the way it works. And in a roundabout way, this kind of leads into my estimation of this. More than 100 non-governmental organizations, NGOs, and government agencies around the world help police YouTube for extremist content, ranging from so-called hate speech to terrorist recruiting videos. All of them have confidentiality agreements barring Google, YouTube's parent company, from revealing their participation to the public. A Google representative told the Daily Caller on Thursday. If you didn't know, the story is from the Daily Caller. A handful of groups, including the Anti-Defamation League and No Hate Speech, a European organization focused on combating intolerance, have chosen to go public with their participation in the program. But the vast majority say that they've stayed hidden and behind these confidentiality agreements. Most groups in the program don't want to be publicly associated with it, according to the Google spokesperson who spoke on the background. Now, what does this mean? This means that Google isn't making the decisions of whether or not to flag your content or not. It's not Google's decision anymore. They're farming these decisions out to others within their public sphere, the public sphere that they accept as being human beings. Okay? They have decided this group is going to make the decisions for this company, meaning that all of the terms and services within the Google parameters are now arbitrary. They don't exist. All the stuff that's written down on those wonderful terms of service, that doesn't exist because they're farming this out at the sole discretion of these other companies, okay? These other entities. Which, in my opinion, puts the content that is on YouTube or Facebook, we'll just talk about YouTube at this point, puts all of that content in totem within the public sphere. It's no longer on the website. Your YouTube video, the one that I'm cutting right now, is no longer on YouTube. That video is actually me standing in a free speech zone on campus with the permit. It is me standing on a soapbox on a public street screaming my craziness at people. Now, you can either accept it or you can move on, but you don't have the right to go kick the soapbox out from underneath me. So, am I right in saying that properties like YouTube are no longer private entities? They're duly compensated. The information they glean from you on a daily basis over the computer, that information that they get paid for very, very well, and you never see any compensation back from, that is a tremendous amount of value, tremendous amount of money that you're handing over to a company so that you have this space to use, this prime. You're paying a prime dollar for a prime space that they can take away from you at any time. So it's like paying for a Maserati. Does anybody buy Maseratis anymore? Do they make Maseratis anymore? Let's just use a car. New Mustang. I'd like a new Mustang. That'd be fun. Actually, you know what I want? A new F-350 dually. Ooh, that's way more than I can buy 2 Mustangs for that. 3, possibly. I got my new dually. But then Ford comes in and says you can only drive that dually every other Thursday, once a year. They get to decide where I get to go. I can only drive it from dealership to advertise their product. Even though I'm paying for the car, it's not like I'm going to write them a check for it. I'm going to, okay, there's going to be a payment plan. I'm paying for the car every month. I have to put insurance on it. If I hit somebody in that car, the responsibility is on me, not on them. So effectively, I own it, but they get to tell me where I can go. Now, if you think that's a crazy thing, it's not. It's not. Because in effect, that very scenario exists within the farming community. Farms, or at least, tractors on farms, tractors and combines on farms are very much a technological beast. They're robots is what they are. And they literally have a very intricate and very powerful navigation system that allows the controller to map out the ground contours of the field and its exact size and dimensions. And then when it's ready to go, you hit a button and the tractor drives itself around the field. It does that so that the computer can more efficiently cut the cut the wheat or whatever it is, or more efficiently lay down the planting so that you can get the most possible yield per acre. Okay? They're highly technical. That's why those things, run between $300,000 and $500,000 for one of these new tractors. Now, the problem with one of those things is you never own them. You can buy them, you can do all this stuff, but when it comes to upgrading any of that software or changing the software, you're not allowed to because you don't own it. No matter how much you paid for it, you don't own it. John Deere still owns it. Case still owns it. And that's a problem. Especially for farmers, because farmers are saying, screw you. I just wrote you a check for $500,000 and you're saying I can't do what I want to do with the property that I just purchased. It's a huge problem. And it's one that we're going to have to work out in the very near future, or somebody's going to war. All right, let's wrap things up with a wonderful little spot here. Stuff you need to know. Actually, there's not a whole lot of stuff you need to know. Other than the internet sucks, okay? The internet just sucks. I'm just glad that I don't have friends. I'm glad that I sit here alone every day and no one is around me with a camera, because as soon as you're out in the public sphere and as soon as there's a camera, you will invariably do something stupid and it will live forever online. That stuff ain't never going away. Never. They'll probably duct tape an iPad to your tombstone with these videos just running on a loop forever. And they would rightfully do that because they're like wicked, smart, and stupid and fun. All right. Apparently Eagles fans very passionate about the team, you see. And very passionate fan apparently missed his subway train. Was trying to catch up with it, and it just goes badly. Oh, no. Yeah, the concrete pillars, they concrete pillars don't give. Boom! And he smacked the crap out of that thing. Hit that again. Kablam! I don't think he meant to hit it. Does it look like he didn't mean to hit it? It kind of looks like, we'll hit this button here. It kind of looks like he just sort of, like he was trying to stay away from the moving train as much as possible and just sort of barely bumped the pillar there, but bumped a little bit more than he meant to. It ended up causing major problems. Kablam! I'm a horrible person. I am just not a good person at all. But it's fun. Hey, it's a good time. You know what I'm saying? We'll leave you with one last video. This is when news goes wrong.
She sat in during when you was filming that sex scene for Superbad.
Yeah, that's not normal. Moms don't sit in on their kids.
I don't think so.
Come on, you seen your daughter have sex.
Hey, my daughter has not.
Wait. I must do something on the paper!
Texas rat snakes are going to be one of the largest snakes that you find in the Metroplex area.
That's one of the best ones.
What really happened on that Thursday here at Augusta High School that led to Chris Wood's death?
The fucking shit! I'm dying in this fucking country ass fucked up town. Shit flying in my mouth. The fuck? I can't see, Paula. And let's get the fuck out of this country, motherfucker.
Can I ask you, if you won all the money, what would you do with it?
Bunch of hookers and cocaine.
Robert Morris and Miranda Jackson live around East Rose and say they were shocked when they first heard those shots.
I just kept hearing it. I'm ducking and everything. In the house, I scared. I dropped my hot pocket.
Hot pocket! Filled in with some air,
Okay,
not
so
as lower
Chad,
pressure, but
Chad,
Camille.
Chad,
Let me talk, Carol.
Translate that for us. I don't know what that means. What does that mean?
Well, if you would let me talk.
Just shut up, will you?
You shut up.
Will you give it to me again, please?
God damn it.
Just start it from the beginning.
Don't tell me to shut up, asshole.
Like you don't have any product?
Well, please don't ever touch me again.
Yeah! Okay, well, that is it, my friends. That is the end of the Michael Noodle Show. Thank you so much for joining me. And please go to the website, thenewmanshow.com. That is where you need to go to get in contact with me. If you want to send me an email, there's a little link there that says Email Newman. It's pretty simple. Check out all my social media, Facebook, YouTube. The Twitter is Newmaniac1. You can get the link right there as well. And please, most importantly, go to the support icon that takes you to Patreon, where you can keep this show and keep me going. Some changes are coming up in the way the live show is going to work and the way the podcast is going to work. It's going to come down to people that pay me get the full thing. You get the full Monty, baby. People that don't won't. That's just the way it's going to be. More details forthwith. Stick around. Thanks for watching.